Hey, Bobby boy.
Say hi, Daddy. Make a big smile. Daddy knows how to make you smile.
Hey, Bobby.
Make a big smile. Go ahead. Go ahead, Bobby. Go ahead. In the middle of the night, Bobby woke up crying for feeding, and suddenly Chris said my name in a way that I'd never heard him say my name before, and it was kind of a combination of pain and panic.
I yelled to Shelly to turn the light on because, he stopped breathing.
And I looked over, and Bobby was in his arms and was limp, had stopped crying and had turned blue and was completely limp.
Please God, what's going on here?
I called 911 while Chris did CPR on him.
It went from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds.
We thought we were losing him. We thought we were watching that happen.
I'm Robert Christopher Allen. That's my real full name, but everybody calls me Bobby.
Today, riding his bike, Bobby Allen is a regular kid. But this could have been a whole different story. Back on that terrifying night when Bobby was rushed to the hospital, it turned out that he was having seizures. For days, he was poked and prodded and tested for everything imaginable. Nobody quite knew what was wrong. And then a moment that changed the course of his life, a moment that ultimately saved his life.
There was one neurologist there who was in the room, and he said, I have heard of this other really rare condition. He said he wasn't overly familiar with it, but that symptomatically, it seems like it fit the profile.
3 weeks later, we got a phone call that we needed to come to Children's right away. They got the results, and they needed to talk to us about it.
Another moment, the moment that Bobby Allen's parents learned of his diagnosis, GLUT1 deficiency. What that means is that glucose, the primary source of fuel to the brain, couldn't make the journey into Bobby's brain the way it should.
It travels through the blood-brain barrier to your brain, and it gives your brain energy. It allows your brain to grow when you're an infant and a toddler and a child, and it continues to energize your brain throughout your entire life. The only known treatment, although it's not a cure, but it helps children, is the ketogenic diet.
So Bobby was immediately put on this restrictive, precisely measured high-fat diet, and has been on it ever since. The ketogenic diet is not perfect, but until there is a cure, the ketogenic diet helps. It feeds the brain using ketones, an alternate fuel that the brain can use to make the energy it so desperately needs. Bobby can't have sugar and most carbohydrates, so every meal is a challenge. Here, he can't have yogurt like his sister or a sandwich like his brother, and Bobby has to drink a glass of oil with every meal. If you ask Bobby, he'll say drinking oil is pretty yucky, but he and his family understand it could be worse, much worse.
Without an early diagnosis, Bobby would not be the person he is today. He would be severely limited cognitively, physically. He would not be able to function on his own.
We would have a very different child. We would probably have a child who doesn't walk and doesn't talk and can't do all the wonderful things he can do.
The vast majority of other children with GLUT1 are not diagnosed until later in life. And in those years until diagnosis are filled with horrible stories of uncontrolled seizures.
Instead of watching your child blossom and evolve like you do with a baby and an infant and a toddler, they're watching their child go the other way because they're not able to figure out what's wrong.
The lack of growth in their brain for those first few years can really never be caught up because it's such an important time for brain growth.
If a child's brain doesn't get glucose, the fuel it needs, and it isn't nourished with an alternative fuel like Bobby's is, critical moments in that child's development are lost forever.
The reason why your head grows is because your brain is growing. And so if your brain isn't growing, your head doesn't grow. And every year when we would go into his pediatrician's office, when they would take the tape out to measure your baby's head, I'd already gone through it once with my first child and never really even noticed the tape measure. But with Bobby, I would say silent prayers during the tape measuring part to make sure that it was growing. Was it growing at the right rate? And every time it was, that was a small victory. Now, 6 years later, look where he is, you know? But we didn't know that. And so for these babies who aren't getting their brains nourished, when they put the tape around their head.
Well, Bobby is an example of the best outcome you can look forward to when diagnosing GLUT1 deficiency.
And Dr. Darryl DeVivo should know. He discovered GLUT1 deficiency in 1989 and has been working with Bobby and his family since Bobby was first diagnosed. Bobby is one of hundreds around the world who have been identified with GLUT1, and who knows how many more are out there who could be helped.
GLUT1 deficiency is a disease where we can actually do something about it. And the earlier we recognize the condition, the earlier we intervene therapeutically and treat the condition, the more likely it is that the outcome will be good.
But the problem is, early diagnosis is not likely. Most doctors have never heard of GLUT1, and at this moment, there is no routine newborn screening for it like there is for diseases like cystic fibrosis or sickle cell anemia. But that is something that Dr. DeVivo and his team at the Columbia University Medical Center have been working towards, a newborn screening test for GLUT1, and ultimately a cure for the disease, something that Dr. DeVivo feels is within reach.
I sense that in GLUT1 deficiency, we're closer to finding a cure than we are in many of these other diseases. And you know, a lot of life is about timing. So this is a moment in time.
This is the moment. They're so close. They can see the finish line. And yet the funding, the primary funding for GLUT1 research, has just been cut.
It's unthinkable to me.
This is a disease where we can make a difference right now.
We're almost too close to let the research falter at this point.
I want every child who's born with GLUT1 to get their diagnosis at several weeks old, like my son did. And I want them to have that opportunity to maximize their potential.
We're not talking about numbers. We're talking about a human being who can be rescued from their disease if you recognize it early and treat aggressively.
The only difference between Bobby and most of the kids that have GLUT1, or the most important difference, was that he was diagnosed and treated at such an early age. For someone's quality of life to be impacted by that simple measure is too compelling to let it go by.
Life is about moments, and it's clear that this time, the moment is ours. Are you ready?
Are you ready to believe? Are you ready for something? Are you ready to see what you know's a long time coming? Manifest, put to rest your worries. Take the reins, ease the strain. That's right, and you can see the light if you try. You can see the light behind their eyes. You can take the wheel and drive to a place where we're standing face to face and hand in hand at the finish line.
Bobby is a success story. He was diagnosed early, put on the ketogenic diet, and is reaching his milestones.
It takes but one word, one dream to start to stitch up tattered seams. But with the hands of many men, it's easier to build strong, so not to tear ever again. Ever again.
If you could help a child be seizure-free, if you could help a child's brain grow so he can walk, talk, learn, and live the life he should live, why wouldn't you? Of course you would. But babies are being born with GLUT1, and without our help, they will go undiagnosed. They will suffer, and their families will suffer. We can't let that happen.
if you try. You can see the light behind their eyes. You can take the wheel and drive. You can see the light behind their eyes. Take the wheel and drive to a place where we're standing face to face and hand in hand. To a place where we're standing face to face and hand in hand at the finish line.